Hello there, welcome to this video, and on this video I'm going to dust down the Super-i-ometer. I haven't used it for a while. When I went through the most important albums of all time, the most important bands of all time, when I went through the most important bands of all time, I'm going to start again. And I can't be even asked to edit. I might edit this bit off, I don't know. Let's start again, Andy. Shall we start again? Hello, welcome to this video, and on this video I am going to be getting the Super-i-ometer out of the cupboard. Haven't used it for a while. We're going to dust it down and we're going to use it, and we're going to use it on two bands. We're going to find which is the greatest band, and which is the greatest band out of KRAFTWERK and Pink Floyd. Now, why would I put those two bands against each other? Well, because I've done two videos recently and it's created consternation amongst the viewers. That's all I'm going to say. I said that Pink Floyd were a bit overrated. Good band, but I said they were overrated. No, Pink Floyd fans didn't like that. They really felt that the Pink Floyd should have been at least equal to the Beatles in influence. But when I did the most important bands in history, I put KRAFTWERK in there at number 4. And a lot of people thought that they shouldn't have been on the list at all. And a lot of people in America had never heard of KRAFTWERK. All right, that doesn't mean much to me anyway. That doesn't mean much, you know, because you know, I mean, do Americans know about anything outside of America? So yeah, I would not take that as meaning anything. That's upset half the audience. Anyway, keep going, Andy. So I've got the Super-i-ometer there, and we are going to pit KRAFTWERK against Pink Floyd. Now, if you want to know how the Super-i-ometer works, the Super-i-ometer takes 10 parameters, and then it decides on those parameters which one wins, and it gives a point to one. So there's 10 parameters. We're going to go through the parameters one by one, and we're going to see what the Super-i-ometer thinks. Now, it's not me deciding this, it's the Super-i-ometer. And then when it gets to the end, it tots it up, and whoever wins, who's ever got the most points, is objectively the better band. And then that's the discussion over, isn't it? And we can all go on and be happy. And you lot who thought that your band was the best and has been proved it's not the best, will just have to go away and lick your wounds and accept the objective result of the Super-i-ometer. So let's start, shall we? The first one. Now, I need to get that thing working, haven't I? Hang on, I'm just going to get the Super-i-ometer over there. You can never sit too close to it because it's a dangerous thing and you don't want to get in the way of its whirring machinery. So I'm just going to go over there and start it up. Right. There we go. So we've got them in now. We have them in. We have Pink Floyd and we have KRAFTWERK here. Right? They're in. They're in the Super-i-ometer. So let's start going through this and see who wins. Right, so the first parameter is influence. Musical influence. Now, I know the Pink Floyd fans are not going to like this. Right, but looking over at the thing, and the point has gone to KRAFTWERK straight away. The Super-i-ometer didn't even have to consider it at all. If you Google KRAFTWERK and influence, you will find website after website after website, all sorts of different people saying that KRAFTWERK are the most influential band in music history, and they're more influential than the Beatles. And I think that might be a bit extreme, but it's not far off the truth. Pink Floyd are influential. They're an influential band, and in a way they had an influence on KRAFTWERK, which is quite interesting. KRAFTWERK started out as a sort of krautrock band in the same sort of bracket as Faust and Can, Amon Düül 2 and all those bands. Their first few albums are even more extreme than that. They are very improvised, sort of there's no electronics at that point. They're a rock band, they're guitar, bass and drums, but they're just creating sound. And of course, Pink Floyd are important in doing a similar thing before that, you know, and I think a lot of the krautrock bands came out of the sound that Pink Floyd was exploring in that period between Pipe at the Gates and Dawn and Dark Side of the Moon, or Meddle, or somewhere around there. I don't think Pink Floyd I don't think they know what the hell they're doing at that point, I've got to be honest. But it was influential. I think at that point in the 60s, you know, people were taking so many drugs, you could get away with any old nonsense at that point. Kraftwerk take this and they form it, and they start to bring in drum machines and electronics, and they start to create this sound, and they bring an aesthetic to it, and it's almost like the opposite of Pink Floyd, because Pink Floyd's all about, eventually, once they find what they're doing, it moves away from Syd Barrett's sort of whimsical English view of rock and roll to Roger Waters' angst-ridden view, and it's all about Roger Waters, isn't it? It's all about his view, it's all about him. Well, Kraftwerk aren't like that. They do something in rock and roll which no one has ever done. They become faceless. The lyrics become meaningless. It's just descriptions of everyday things, often very repetitive things. They see themselves as like an advert. It's very Andy Warhol. It's very pop art, right? And so the way they use electronic instruments, because so many people said, "Oh, what about Tangerine Dream?" Yeah, they are pioneers. Wendy Carlos is a pioneer of synthesizers, and you know, I know that Pink Floyd were using like electronics and synthesizers, but not in the way that Kraftwerk were doing it. Not in that sort of robotic, industrial, postmodern, repetitive, like commodity-driven, capitalist thing. You know. There's a certain thing that then goes on to influence sort of indie music, it influences dance music, hip-hop. Without doubt, the influence of Kraftwerk is so all-encompassing. If you think that's not the case, you haven't done your research. You just don't realise. And it's probably because all this music that is around today, which has entirely come from Kraftwerk, you don't like. But we're not saying about what you like, we're talking about influence, you know, and you've got to understand when we're trying to make an objective decision, nobody cares what you like. That is not in there. Now, what you like, or what I like, is counted in this, because one of the parameters, the last parameter, is my choice, because this is my super-i-ometer. So it is slightly clipped, it's only 10% slightly skewed. Objectively, we step back, Kraftwerk has had more influence than Pink Floyd. Shall we move on? Number 2, popularity. Kraftwerk sold a lot of records. They've had hit records. Nothing compared to Pink Floyd. Pink Floyd has sold millions and millions and millions. When the super-i-ometer was working this out, as soon as it saw Dark Side of the Moon, the record sales for that, it was just a no-brainer. I mean, that album was in the charts for years and years on end, and all that sort of stuff. So the point for popularity definitely goes without argument to Pink Floyd. So the third parameter is skill, technical ability, facility, right? Now, this is a difficult one to discuss with this band. There's people going to argue, say, well, Kraftwerk are just using machines, they're just using electronics, they're not playing anything, it's just signals and synthesizers. Yeah, but they were a band, and they were an improvising band. And if you listen to the first couple of albums, you could hear the sort of virtuosity level that is there. They're not the Mavish Knocks, not Weather Report, but neither are Pink Floyd. Pink Floyd are not a virtuoso band, and I would say that it's a little bit of an unknown quantity with Kraftwerk, but the fact that they're a krautrock band, and the fact that they've come out of that scene, and the fact that they understand music well enough to move towards the stuff that they do later on, I would imagine that they've got probably greater technical skill than Pink Floyd, who are not really a technical band. The most technical, skillful musician is Richard Wright, and he's not a Keith Emerson. But it is only fair, and the super-i-ometer has come up with it, it's awarded half a point each for skill. And I think that sounds about right. Okay, the next one is image. This is the image of the band, the image that they propel of themselves. Now, both of these, this is another troublesome one, because I think in terms of album covers, it's without doubt Pink Floyd. And Pink Floyd, a lot of the success later on, I think, is these iconic album covers. But I would say that Kraftwerk's album covers are all equally iconic. But the thing about Kraftwerk, is they are iconic themselves. They turn themselves into an iconic thing. They become part of the performance, and they become part of the performance in a way that no rock band has ever done before. Early rock bands all wanted to try and look the same. You know, that sort of rock and roll thing where they all had the same clothes on, and, you know, in the 70s you had bands like Shawaddy Waddy. You always knew a crap band if they had all the same clothes on. Proper bands all wore different clothes, you know. And so Kraftwerk push against that, and they become this almost like robotic, mass-produced thing. And you imagine Kraftwerk in a row, and no one's got an equal status. It's all very Star Trek sort of thing, isn't it? You know, it's all this sort of utopian idea where everyone's the same, you know, and it's very Germanic as well, you know, like a mannequin. That look is so powerful. I don't think Pink Floyd can really compete. And although Pink Floyd has, you know, a good light show, I suppose, live, and it's some incredible album covers, I don't think they beat Kraftwerk here. So the point has to go to Kraftwerk for image, you know, which is very important in rock and roll and in bands. The other one is charisma. This is how iconic. And again, Pink Floyd, Syd Barrett was charismatic without a doubt, but that's a faceless band. Part of the thing that's interesting about Pink Floyd is their facelessness and the way that they use spectacle to overcome the fact that they're really faceless band. And you might be saying, yeah, but Andy, they do use it. Look at that. They actually built a wall on stage. But Kraftwerk are doing similar things live. Everything about Kraftwerk is groundbreaking and iconic. So I think, again, for charisma, the image that they put on, again, there's another point going here to Kraftwerk. Right. We're now going to move on to their live performance. Both bands have very powerful live performances, but I think here Pink Floyd win the day, you know, and they don't do it by coming out like Steven Tyler or The Who. You know, they are sat there, and in the later years they sat there with actual other musicians on stage playing the stuff for them pretty much. Oh, you didn't say that, did you, Andy? I did. I think that's the case, you know. A lot of support from other session players on stage, but the spectacle of a Pink Floyd concert, and of course Pink Floyd right back to the early days were thinking, right at the back of the UFO Club, they were thinking about the live show and how that worked. I think this goes against them in terms of charisma and image, but it works for them in terms of live show. So I think in terms of the live performance, Pink Floyd should be getting the points for that one. Oh, it's getting tight. Right, another thing we have to think about is the production. Again, both of these bands are very powerful. Kraftwerk had changed the face of production. They changed the face of production, but so did Pink Floyd. And I actually think that Pink Floyd's massive success, Dark Side of the Moon, is so important. And somebody said this in the comments, and I hadn't thought this, it's so true. They kick in when Alan Parsons comes in. Alan Parsons comes in a little bit too late, and he acts like a George Martin to a Pink Floyd. And the production on Dark Side of the Moon is utterly groundbreaking. It's as groundbreaking as Kraftwerk, but it's also so beautiful in what it does. Trans-Europe Express by Kraftwerk is also beautifully produced, but I don't think it's as iconic as the production on Dark Side of the Moon. This is a really interesting thing, and I'd like to get into this more because, you know, I'll stand up and say I think Pink Floyd are overrated, and then you feel like you got to stand your ground. So you start to do the research, and you start to pull out these things, and you go, isn't Dark Side of the Moon remarkable in its production? And they never do it again. They never do it before, and they never do it again. We never get quite that thing ever again. It's interesting, that is. Anyway, so yeah, the production of the albums, the recording quality, I think its points got to go to Pink Floyd there. Right, the next one is cultural influence. Now, most bands don't have any cultural influence. We're not talking about influence on music or other bands. We're talking about influence on the wider culture, right? Now, I do believe that Pink Floyd have had a significant influence on the wider culture. Where would I say this? Well, for start, they managed to make films. That would be an example, you know, where bands get such a presence in culture that films are made, like Tommy or, you know, Hard Day's Night, Beatles, and they have films. Their stuff is featured in films right from the beginning. I discovered them through films. I discovered them through a documentary about a surfer called the Crystal Voyager. I think I saw that when I was very young, and I was very impressed by that. Pink Floyd at Pompeii is incredible, but The Wall. But also there's these ideas that, you know, people say, oh, you know, if you put on Dark Side of the Moon, you play it next to like Wizard of Oz, it has this thing. That is a cultural thing. You know, very few bands attain something like that, where they enter into folklore. And Pink Floyd have done that so much, you know. But the thing with Kraftwerk, they have as well. Because this sort of aesthetic of the sort of robotic machine-like mass-produced music that is faceless and valueless and is only describing the exact moment that you're in and nothing more, with no extra meaning, almost like the opposite. This is so all-encompassing that I think there's a cultural influence there. Now, this is interesting because looking at the Super-i-ometer in the corner, it's giving the points either way. It's half a point each, but it's erring towards Pink Floyd. Remember that, erring towards Pink Floyd. Okay, right, the next one is progression. This is a new thing that I've programmed into the Super-i-ometer. We never had this one before, but I think it's very important. A band can come out and they can make one great album, like Guns N' Roses. It's a classic album. Then what do they do after that? Nothing. They squander it away and just die away, right? That's got to be counted for. You know, bands that come out and not only have staying power, but manage to ride with the times and change their sound and keep going, that's really, really important. Now, it could be argued that Pink Floyd do that, because in 1997 they bring out Momentary Lapse of Reason, they've lost Roger Waters, and they managed to have a big selling record. But I would argue that Pink Floyd, and this is why I believe they're overrated, I think you've got a window of two masterpieces, which are Dark Side of the Moon and Wish You Were Here, and then two flawed masterpieces, which is Meddle and Animals. And The Wall, I don't think, is a masterpiece. I think it exists on its image and its story and certain tracks. So a career that long is resting on two masterpieces of two, you know, with Led Zeppelin, you know, I'd say one is a masterpiece, two is a masterpiece, three is a masterpiece, four is a masterpiece, House of the Holy, Nearly, Physical Graffiti without a doubt, Presence is pretty close to being a masterpiece in my book. It's one of my favourite albums by him. In Through the Outdoor, maybe not. Coda, maybe not. But we've got a much shorter time, we've got a much stronger hit rate. And then if you look at what, say, Rock Plant's done afterwards, and you know, there's some really great stuff there, as is there with Roger Waters, right? But I just think with Pink Floyd, they're signed because of Syd Barrett. He then goes. They stumble around for album after album, not quite sure what they're doing, with no real sound and not knowing what they do. They finally get their act together on Dark Side of the Moon, which saves their bacon. And then from Dark Side of the Moon, it is just a slow death. That's what I think about Pink Floyd. Whereas Kraftwerk, right, really interesting, obscure krautrock albums. If they'd only done those first two albums, the proggers here would be celebrating them and getting special points for being able to tell me some krautrock obscure band that I never heard of. You guys, do you ever hear Kraftwerk? Oh mate, I'm really way out. You know, I'll be sitting there going, well, this is weird stuff. You know, but they take that, and if you listen to the albums, they progress and they progress. And by the time they get to Trans Europe Express, it's a sublime album. And then they keep going, and then they start having hit records, and they bring out things like Model out, you know, which is just a pure pop song. And the travel is absolutely incredible. So without a doubt, the point here for progression goes to Kraftwerk. So we're now at number 10, the final one, which is my choice, right? Now, for all of those who think, who shouted at me and said, oh, you put Kraftwerk here, this is all about your taste, it's not an objective opinion. I am arguing Kraftwerk's case because I'm being objective. I know the influence they've had. I know all the bands that have said they wouldn't exist without Kraftwerk. I can hear what they've done. I can even hear the incredible beauty of some of their tunes and how incredible what they're doing is and how they nailed it. They're an incredible band. My favourite band out of these two bands is Pink Floyd, without a doubt. It's Pink Floyd. I'm a progger. It's Dark Side of the Moon. It's Echoes. It's Atom Half Mother. It's Set Your Old Controls for the Heart of the Sun. You know, it's Astronomodonomy. It's Interstellar Overdrive. It's all these. I love all that stuff. So they get a point. They have got a point from me. My bias has gone towards Pink Floyd. And if you add this up, well, shall we see what the results are? Super-i-ometer, what's the results? There. We have it. It's a draw. It's a draw. And if you go back, and we go back to cultural influence, there we're on shaky ground. I don't think Super-i-ometer wants to commit itself. So we're erring towards Pink Floyd. I would say that in terms of greatness, it's Pink Floyd by a little bit, but that's my own personal opinion. Are Pink Floyd overrated? Oh my God, yes. Who are they overrated by? They're hysterical fans that will not have anything said against them. Right, but if you just step back, hysterical fans, right, go and have a listen to Kraftwerk, spend some time with them. You go and listen to Trans-Europe Express, the first track on that. Have a listen to it. That's dull and boring. You know, people are going on about Obscured by Clouds, how great that is. It's got a nice sound to it, but God, it's boring. I'm done. We're at the end. Thank you, Super-i-ometer. So, a draw. Everyone's happy. I love it when it's a draw. It always is a draw, have you noticed? When it really counts, it's always a draw. You know, but it's not me. It's a Super-i-ometer. It's objective truth. So just bear that in mind. You don't get that at any other ranking channel, but you do here. Objective truth. I'm now going to box the Super-i-ometer away. I boxed it away last year because I realised how dangerous it was, especially in these troublesome times. I mean, we don't want it going in and trying to sort out the Ukraine-Russian war or the Israeli, you know, Palestinian war. We don't want them to be. We don't want to know who is right and wrong there, do we? We never know. Maybe if it came out as a draw, they'd all bloody stop fighting, and maybe that is the point I'm making here. But maybe I've just let the cat out of the bag as well, and I don't like to do that. Oh, Andy, you've let the cat out of the bag. All right then, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like it. If you want to see more, subscribe. If you want to become a patron, you can become a patron. We now have the Patreon WhatsApp, which is a group, and it's very active. My patrons are involved in my Patreon all day long. They're interacting, they're making friends, they're all sharing their little records that they like, and they're all talking about, you know, what is the best Jethro Tull album, and, you know, what's Magma, and Henry Cow, and what about this, and they're sharing their own music. Oh, I love your music, I'll buy your album. And this is the thing I want to do on this channel. I am now going to switch off, and I'm going to finish filming my final Philosophy Sunday video, which is going to be the last one. And I'm going to restate the intentions of this channel again, because I think they need to be stated, and that's where I'm at now. But the main thing is to get a community and get people sharing music, sharing music they like, discovering new music, sharing the music they like, and for artists to be able to get in touch with serious music fans. I know we're all arguing with each other, but the thing is, we're all serious music fans here. It's not like Rick Beato fans. It's not just a bunch of guys that only listen to bloody the Beatles and bit of Pearl Jam. That's not what we've got here. We've got a lot of proper music fans, and we all need to come together, and I need to bring you together. And maybe I've been a little bit, you know, creating divides here. Maybe I've been just trying to get, you know, the views up. You know, maybe the fact that I've just, you know, packed my job in, right, and now I'm doing this for a living, and I need a little bit of support. So maybe I just cranked, you know, I know how to crank that algorithm. Believe me, I do know how to do it when I have to do it. You know, and maybe I've been doing that a little bit much. If you want to know about all this, I'm about to do that video now. Anyway, I'm going to get off this one, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye bye.